Welcome to Wealthy Mind, where we talk about all things finances, the good, the bad, the ugly, and the surprising. Hey, welcome to Wealthy Mind. I am your host, Misty Rosegold, International Success Coach, and today I have back with me Todd Huettner. Hi, Todd.
Hey, Misty, how are you?
I am doing great. How are you?
Good.
Awesome. So I know that we're here to help entrepreneurs and leaders, executives, and founders and all the things have a wealthy mind, create a wealthy mind, maintain a wealthy mind, all the things that we need to be successful in life. Um, we've talked a lot about your processes, your procedures, what do you do, your business, but I kind of want to go deeper and help people understand who's Todd. So are you okay with that conversation?
Sure.
Good, excellent. So just a quick reminder, please tell the audience, what do you do?
I wear a couple hats. I am a divorce financial analyst and really focus on implementation, functional implementation. And then I also run a mortgage bank. Been in real estate and finance for about 30 years. That's kind of how I wound up here. Never planned on doing what I do, but I help a lot of people and that's why I do it.
I think those are some of the best careers, the ones that choose us and we surrender to them. I've done it and I know you've done
Oh, I
it.
surrender. I still fight every now and again, but
Same. There are parts of what I do where I fight it and I'm like, I used to be good at surrendering to this part. Why am I not now? Let's
yeah.
really figure that out. But no, my work chose me and yours chose you. So we answered that call and here we are, providing excellent service to people in our given industries. So thank you, first and foremost, to surrendering to that call, even if you went down with a fight, because I know I did. So I was like, fine, okay, fine. And then you have to re-surrender. Like, sometimes you hit a wall and you're just like,
Yeah.
am I on the right path? Am I doing the right thing? And you kind of just have to submit and surrender to it once again and let go and see where it takes you. So you provide very valuable service to people, and I know that a lot of people aren't aware that there is an option out there when going through the divorce process, be it dealing with their mortgage or the absolute, like, the nuts and bolts of their financials. So I know you handle both sides of that, and I really appreciate that you have a heart to serve people and give back and help them with their pain points of that area and just make life better. So um, let's pull back the curtain on Todd, but we'll start as Todd, the business owner. And I would love for you to tell the audience what are some of the challenges that you face on a reoccurring basis in your business specifically?
I think it's a lot of them are the same things that any small business owner faces, just, managing, wearing a lot of different hats and trying to balance focus within your business. And so within business, there's the big aspect of, am I doing the business? Am I building the business aspect? So there's a lot of different books and other topics that I've read on this, but that it really
Mhm.
comes down to it is having that balance because doing it is really rewarding and necessary, but you still have to be able to guide and and grow and develop your business. And they're really two different hats. And
Mhm.
sometimes you want to do a lot of one and but you just can't ignore the other. You got to pay attention to both. So I think that's really probably the biggest challenge is when to throttle more on one than the other, but still knowing you've got to do both.
Okay, so in my language, that's prioritizing. So
Yeah.
it's knowing which day, which one takes priority. And it's different for all of our businesses, but in mine, I have a constant steady flow of keeping my pipeline full and meeting with clients and doing podcast interviews and networking and all the things. So it's really being able to prioritize every single day what is the most important. And let's say life happens, which it did a couple of weeks ago, and I had to remove some things from my schedule. So the things that I kept were of high priority and the rest got rescheduled.
Yeah, and that's
So,
a key point, I think. And this is, something I do all the time is I'll get into a position where sometimes doing all the little things feels good because you can check a lot of boxes, but it's not the one thing you really needed to do or the two things you really needed to do that day.
mhm.
And I think a lot of people, that's just human nature, but I think a lot of people struggle with that as well. And so it's the being busy versus being efficient.
Mm,
Sometimes it feels good to be busy, especially when it's a few of those things you don't like to do, but you got to do.
yes, but being busy isn't always moving the needle and it's not always efficient. And most
Yeah.
of the time it's not efficient. So, um, you're human, which is great. So we want the audience to know that you're human and you deal with the human things inside of business. It's not just all rainbows and sunshine every day. So, there's a lot of times where people will take a look at another person's business or life and create a story around it. And a lot of times that story is a false narrative. Oh, they have it so easy. Oh, he makes blah, blah, blah. Oh, wow, he looks like he has a perfect life, or she, or whatever the case is, right? So being able to look at things through that lens of honesty and openness, transparency, and vulnerability is so, so, so important because once we do that, maybe we're solving a problem for another person that's listening simply because none of us have it all together every single day. We figure it out every single day. That's what we do as business owners. And if we're going to tell the absolute truth, we're all showing up every single day, figuring it out every single day. And some of us are better at it than others.
Well, and sometimes you have more in the fuel tank to do those things too.
Right.
So I think, um, the grass is always greener, or you always, if you, if you look, if you look to others to compare yourself, you'll see what you're looking for. So whether you see yourself as not doing something or doing something or someone else accomplishing something or not accomplishing something, I think that's something that I probably piece together what a lot of other people have said, but something that if you look at others, for comparison perspective, if you look at others, you'll often see what you're looking for, both positive and negative. And that's it's always a challenge. There's always something different, and that's one of the aspects of being a small business owner
Hmm.
is pros and cons that you can adapt and adjust quickly and with a smaller organization, but you also have to do a lot of different things. And I didn't realize this until several years ago, but um, a lot of the guys that I grew up with, like my tight-knit group of 5, 6 guys from elementary school all the way through high school,
Hmm.
I realized several years ago, all of our parents were self-employed. I mean, my dad was the chairman at the University of Oklahoma of the economics department, but he did real estate consulting and other things. And so all of us whose parents were self-employed, we all started our own businesses and run our own businesses. And so that's one thing that's been really beneficial is we just have kind of an informal, it's an informal mastermind group where we can call each other up and do so regularly. I don't know, once a month. Sometimes it's seems like it's once a week, but just simple things. Hey,
Yeah.
years ago I remember, hey, man, this fax stuff, and found a great e-fax service to use. This is a few decades ago, but um, just simple things like that, all the way up to something that's a little bigger. And,
Hmm.
here's one other thing along this line. I was talking to my CPA one time that I'd used for years, and I was talking about just kind of the ups and downs. It's small business owner, you're kind of terrified you're so busy and you can't keep up, or terrified you're not busy enough. And that's it's a lot. And I just felt, oh, it's only me. It's only what I do. It's only my industry. Lending is particularly that way. Not so much with the divorce consulting, but some. Um, and she goes, no, it's everyone. I'm like, what do
It
you
is.
mean? And she said, it's every business. I specialize in small business owners, and everyone has this huge up and down through the growth of their company. And it's everyone experiences it. It's totally normal. There's a different rhythm and cadence to each industry or everything like that. But she's like, this is the normal.
Hmm.
And so that was another thing as we were sitting here, popped into my head, that a lot of this is just part of the process of being a small business owner.
Hmm. It
And just
is.
knowing that is, I don't know, makes you feel a little bit better. At least there's a few other people in the boat. You're not the only crazy one.
Yes. Most of us feel that pain too. So it's you can surrender to that fear, or you can overcome it and say, you know what? Nope, I'm going to be the eye of the storm. Whatever the storm is, if you're struggling to get business or if you have too much, like they're both struggles that business owners go through. And we have to figure out how to manage both sides of that coin. So my personal take is how do we stay centered, grounded, and calm internally and just trust that it's all going to work itself out? Of course, we're going to show up and do what we can and help things along. But if we're chaotic inside, it makes all that even worse. If we're surrendering to fear, it's going to add to the chaos and then the external gets worse. So if you feel like you don't have enough coming in, check yourself. If you feel like you have too much coming in, check yourself.
It's never as good or as bad as it feels at the moment,
Hmm.
in the moment.
Yeah, that is a true statement. So, why do you do what you do? What's your why?
My Simon Sinek why is I love showing people, well, sorry, I believe there's a better way to do almost everything, and I love showing people how they can do things differently to dynamically improve their lives.
Mm.
And when it comes to divorce financial consulting, again, it's the second time life chose me for something that I was highly resistant to for years. And it really just like it came back to most people just don't know there's all these options. They don't know that they can choose their path and create their own path, whether it's going to be cooperative, collaboration, mediation. I mean, however they want. They can drive the car and have their professionals in the back seat. They don't have to hire someone and have them go out and basically outsource everything about the process. They don't have to go to court. You don't you can hire who you want when you want. You can hire people, attorneys, on an unbundled basis. Here in Colorado, we now have legal LLPs.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
it's based on LLP, but it's licensed legal paraprofessional. And so
Hmm.
the vast majority of people don't even know there's all these options out there that they can choose their path. They can choose different professionals. They don't have to go the stereotypical route of quarter on their own. And
Mm.
I just kept seeing people making the same mistakes over and over. So whether it was someone buying a house and not realizing that they could restructure things. Most people just think, oh, I'll shop around and I'll get a great rate. And I'm like, yeah, I'll shop for a rate, save a few $100, but structure everything the right way, you can save several thousand. And it's the same thing with the divorce consulting is people aren't making bad choices. They're making uninformed choices with bad or less than optimal outcomes. And so many times people go whistling right past an opportunity and never see it. And so that's really kind of the why, but and it's also like, well, you could do this without being a small business owner. And and I think it's the ability to it's really rewarding. It's more rewarding, I think, but it's also the ability to serve people better.
Mm,
And that's why I started my own company lending in 2007 is I realized that the way everyone else was doing lending, the traditional loan process with guessing, just kept creating so many problems for people. It was a guess of whether people could do something. They took it for 100% guarantee. They would sell their house, be ready to buy a new one, or they would put everything, structure everything in a divorce around something happening with keeping the house or whatever, and then it wouldn't work. And it would just be so costly. And I realized it would never change because the people creating the error who are making this guess and not telling anyone it was a complete guess, they weren't paying for the cost of their error.
mm,
And so that's why I had to start my own company because everyone in the industry, and still for the last 20 plus years, has been going the way of bigger computers, bigger algorithms. Let's automate more and more and more. And at the end of the day, to me, it was also like, let's get it right. And
mm.
there was a lot of value in just slowing down and doing it differently and getting it right for people who, um, if you have a real simple situation and you don't get it quite right, you're not that far off from where you would have been. But the more complexity that's there, there's just a much bigger difference. And it's also when people are at a point where they're they really need a lot. You know, when it comes to divorce, you're experiencing several of the most stressful things in life all at once.
And painful.
Yeah. And so it's an opportunity where there was a huge need not being served and I wouldn't say I went running into the void, but maybe it was more of the black hole sucking me into the void. But at the end of the day, it was just a bunch of people highlighting to me that it was an opportunity. So sometimes you gotta listen to what the world's trying to tell you.
I agree with that. You saw a need. You may have resisted the black hole, but eventually you surrendered to it. And that's awesome. So, what I heard from you is that you find a lot of fulfillment from serving others.
Yeah, and that's what the finding my why with Simon Sinek was helpful for because I felt there was a common theme between my personal and my community involvement and my professional, but I couldn't really articulate it. And
Mm,
so that was one thing that really helped me come to an understanding of just kind of who I am as a person. And that why statement is how I try to be within my family. It's what I try to be within my community and being involved in different philanthropies and coaching youth sports and just being an active, productive member of society in my community. But then also within my professional community, not just serving clients, but also being involved in the professional community to move it forward in a positive way.
yeah, I understand. I get a lot of fulfillment from serving others and doing what I do to make a better world for all of us to live in. So I understand. Something that you touched on, I want to go back to is you can create your own divorce story, which is awesome. That's very empowering. So letting people know that they have more control over their divorce story than they realize when they find professionals like you that kind of fill in the gaps between, oh my God, we need to get a divorce, and oh, there's an attorney, right? So helping people understand that they can create their story just as much as we create our own narratives in our lives. We started creating a story and a narrative when we were children, and we've been building upon that narrative since then. So it's like, what story do we want to make up in our heads? Okay, let's go do that. Right. And some people are making up really ugly stories, and some people are making up really great stories, and somewhere in between. But we have that power to create our own story, our own narrative. And if we really think back to our childhood when we started creating that story, it's like, hold on a second, is that the story I want to live? So looking at it in the divorce lens, Wait, what? I have more control and power over the story of this divorce process? Yeah, you do. Just as much as we do over our lives. And for some people, that's hard to admit. It's hard to like look at the divorce process or the stories that we create for ourselves through the lens of truth. And the truth is, we can change that narrative at any time. So I was just watching a movie yesterday that was a fantasy movie with kids in it. And it made me think of this whole topic of creating that story because the kids lived in one reality, but in their imagination, they lived in a different one. And that so applies to today as adults. Like, what imaginative life are you living in? It's your own creation. So let's apply that to the divorce process too.
Well, you can't control everything, but
No, you cannot.
you've got the ability to create that with which you do control. And you can control your response, your reaction to everything. The other
Hmm.
thing, I tell people if you can work cooperatively and collaboratively, then you control so much more. And the two of you together as a couple can really do some amazing things and have a great outcome, give and take, and all these other aspects. And then people say, yeah, but my spouse isn't, and that's a reality. If if your spouse simply drags you into court and
Hmm.
refuses to participate, cooperate, or do anything, okay, fine. But you still have your peace. I actually had last week had a client who it wasn't cooperative. I mean, it wasn't going to court, but it wasn't super cooperative. So they
Hmm.
at least got to stay out of court. And and I said, look, we're not going for optimization because we can't control all those pieces. But what we're going to do is we're going to look for an agreement that's going to be good enough for you to rebuild what you want. Let's get the Lego pieces that don't have to, they're not going to be assembled in the picture that you want, but we've got enough pieces here where we can put it back together to create what you want out of that. And so that's what we're in the process of doing. And
Hmm.
we're restructuring a little bit here, a little bit there. It's going to take a little bit of massaging. And it's not ideal. It's really close though. And so, as opposed to seeing, gosh, I didn't get this, I didn't get that, I didn't get this, and this, seeing all the shortcomings, it's like, yeah, but you got an agreement out of court, which is huge. You got all the fundamental pieces, you got the big chunks, and there's enough in the middle, we can re-sculpt this into exactly what you want. And really close to where we would have been had we been able to get more cooperation and that outcome. And so it's really just we're going to be in a better place, but she's going to feel so much better about the outcome. And at the end of
Hmm.
the day, that's so key to being able to just move on and be a great parent and now focus on co-parenting. And
Hmm.
if you're still mad that you didn't get this or get that, and even though it was right there, and yeah, it totally made sense, and they still wouldn't do it, okay, so be it, just being able to let that go because at the end of the day, you've got to be the best co-parent that you can
Hmm.
and be there for your kids. And even if you don't have kids or they're majority age, you still are going to be a co-parent. And even if you don't have kids, you're still going to be a member of a community, whether it's family, whether it's business, whether it's church related, whether it's just neighborhood, right? I mean,
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
don't want to just burn everything to the ground on your way out the door. So I think it's helpful, but just having that lens to be able to view that, I can do what I want here is so important. And it's hard. I mean, it's really hard. It's easy because it's not my life, right?
Right.
It would be so much harder if it was a flip. But having done this for so long, I've got so many experiences as where I've seen things both ways and turn
Hmm.
out really well that I can help with that guidance and perspective. And it's the same as being a small business owner, having, like I said earlier, having those friends that I can bounce things off of, or just having a CPA just give me that little piece. No, this is the normal. And it's like, really? Just at least makes you just feel, you know, Like it's not all coming apart.
Yes, understood. So I want to go a little bit deeper in the story, creating the narrative around the divorce, because I've been through it myself, and I had a very peaceful, it was a beautiful divorce. I know that sounds weird to people listening, but it was a beautiful divorce. So when you start thinking about divorce, is when you want to start creating the story and the narrative for the divorce process. And how you approach it from the moment you start thinking about divorce is going to dictate a lot of the outcome, a lot of it.
Yeah.
So that's where I want people to catch themselves and start creating the right narrative and say, you know what? I'm thinking about divorce. Now, how do I approach this so that it is a good process for every single person involved? And then you have much more control. If you're just being emotionally reactive, you've lost complete control over the situation.
Yeah.
But when I went through my divorce, I chose to take the path of unconditional love. And that meant I wasn't trying to take David and rake him over the coals. It meant that I wanted it to be the best outcome for both of us. And I looked at all the pros and cons of our lives, who we are as people, and I made my decisions based on that. So David got off really easy when it came to the financials, but I banked on myself because I know that I'm really good at what I do. And I'm like, you know what? I would rather have a peaceful relationship because we had three boys that we raised together. One was my nephew, and two were his sons, my stepsons. There were many more people involved, but that's just me. You know, if I can do something better, I'm going to try. I'm going to do my best. And why does it have to be contentious? Why does it have to be ugly? So there was no point in our process that it was an ugly experience. Did either one of us want it? No, but it was a necessary part of our journey. And the way that I handled it means that David and I are still very good friends, and we've had lots of great conversations with each other post-divorce, which is good for everybody else involved. You know, it's good for the kids, it's good for the community. It's good for anybody that knows me, anybody that knows him. We only have good things to say about each other. But that started in my head and in my heart when I started really thinking about divorcing him. How am I going to handle this? Because how I handle things now is going to determine the outcome of this process.
Yeah. And I mean, you said something there is being able to be around them, say nice things about them.
Hmm.
And, we all know those people. We've all been around them who are very negative, constantly backward looking.
Hmm.
And it is absolutely destructive to children. But other people don't want to be around that either. And
No.
that's the other part is like, who do you want to be? How do you want this to be? You don't control it all, but you can control everything that, again, you can create everything from your control, your response, your behavior. And and there's a cost. And the cost isn't always dollars, right? You said you were willing to give in certain areas because you were confident it didn't matter. Those pieces didn't matter, and you
Mhm.
wanted to put a higher value on relationship and other aspects. And and that's the way to do it. There is the financial,
Mhm.
obviously, but there's
Oh, yeah.
the there's
100%.
the uh, there's the emotional side, and there's a balance. And that's what I try to explain to people early on is, think about this. Like, you don't need to run out and hire a bunch of people. You don't need to run out and file. There are cases where you do, obviously, if there's safety issues and other things going on in extreme situations. But for most people, having the ability to think it through and say, can I work with them? A lot of it's on your part. It's not necessarily, I mean, yes, there's two sides, but can you be objective? Can you be realistic in your ability to communicate, cooperate, and do those things? I think oftentimes people aren't honest with themselves in how they can be in the moment to do those things, even though they're expecting it of their spouse. So it's in general, hey, the more you can agree on and the more you can do yourselves, the better the outcome. Lean on professionals as needed for framework, structure, process, But, think about if your spouse cooperates with you 100% fully in every which way and you guys are really doing it, what does that look like? Visualize that. How does it look? How does it go? There's no reason we can't have that.
Mhm.
Okay. If they
Yep.
come along, that's okay too. Then
Yep.
what does that look like? How can you be your best you? And what kind of person do you want to be taking the high road and doing those things? And that's one thing I tell people a lot is you won't, there's a lot of things you could do that you might regret and will regret. And there's most of the time taking the high road, you won't in the long run. There's times when you'll
Yes.
second guess it and you'll want to have done other things, but you'll feel better about it in the long run. And you've got to give yourself grace too. This is one of the
Hmm.
areas that I've really started focusing with clients on is you won't be perfect. You are going to snap. You're going to send that text, that email, or say something that is completely unproductive. You did it out of emotional response, reaction, not a thoughtful response.
Yes. For God's sake, people check your emotions. Holy God, they can ruin everything.
But you're not going to be perfect. Like
No.
realize you're not going to be perfect. So when you do F up, be forgiving of yourself and then, give grace not just to yourself, but give grace to your spouse, your
Mhm.
ex as well, because they won't be perfect either. Some are far less, far from it, but at the end of the day, that's the key is give grace to them and to yourself. And
Mhm.
even people who are willing to give grace will give it to their spouse, but not to themselves. And that's
Yeah.
where I think the biggest difference that you can make with folks is explaining that.
And understanding that both parties are in pain, even if somebody pretends like they're not, the reality
They're
is they
freaking out.
are. Every single person going through the divorce process is in pain. If you understand that, it helps you give the other person grace and give yourself grace, but make better decisions from that place. So
I've
this is,
never had a client who got married hoping to get divorced. So, right? So at one point, they were optimistic. This was the right person. They loved him. And while that may have been many, many stories, many moons, and many grievances ago,
Mhm.
no one gets into this with this as being their wished for outcome. So
Most people. So let's go ahead and get wrapped up. This has been a very good conversation with you, learning more about just who you are as a person and what makes you tick. So, to complete the question about what's your why, I know you have a home life. So, are those people in your home life part of your why?
absolutely. And I mean, they always have been. And I've got a wife and three boys. They're 20, 18, and 16 now. And a lot of what I've done and the way I've been a small business owner so I could be flexible and do other things that I think it was in my bones, but also just the ability to, I've done a lot of youth coaching and it takes a huge amount of time.
Mm-hmm.
And I coached, I coached for my neighbor before I even had kids for 4 years, assistant coach on a football team. So between that and my boys, I've coached 12 years of football, think 18 years total. It's a lot, but it's really, really rewarding. And there's really nothing better than hearing, and this is for outside beyond my family, but it's still a kind of my bigger family, my player community. I'll be at a high school football game somewhere at the, I don't go to the mall much, but somewhere, and I'll
Yeah,
hear,
yeah.
ouch, and someone will yell, and I'll turn around and it'll be some kid these kids who are now maybe
Hmm.
30 when I coach my neighbor, or
Yeah.
some of my other guys who are high school or college at this point. So it's really rewarding. It was an opportunity to just spend an awful lot of time with my kids and be able to do things with my family and my wife. and
Mm-hmm.
and you don't appreciate it until like my oldest two now are out of the house. And so I've just got my 16-year-old. And so you realize you don't know what you've got till it's gone.
Yeah.
You appreciate your kids so much more when they're gone, and you realize you're so glad to see them go out on their own, do their own amazing things in the world, and
Mhm.
you're so proud of them. But at the same time, you're kind of sad they're not around the house, and then they come home at Christmas and it's absolute chaos again, and
And you love it, and then you're like, oh
and
my
you love
God.
it,
Oh
and you're
God.
like, oh yes.
Yeah, totally. Well, what I heard from you is that you enjoy being a pillar in the community, and I appreciate so much that you show up as that type of human and you want to make a better impact on the community around you and the people around you. I know that you and your boys are heavily into sports, so if you all are interested in seeing the coolest sport ever, go to Todd's Facebook page and
Oh,
you can watch one of the
shovel racing.
boys shovel race. Like, that is the coolest sport ever. You guys have
Yeah,
to go check it out.
William couldn't go this year. He had a volleyball tournament, but yeah, it's fun. They Jack's second time we weren't sure on because they didn't record it because they thought he'd already gone once. So he kind of got hosed. His second run was really fast. Edward went over 50. Jack was right there too, and he was probably mid to low 50s. And the race course was a little slower, but I mean, we're talking a grain scoop. You're sitting on a grain scoop, a shovel, and you're
Hmm.
going down a ski hill that's groomed, but you're doing it at 50 to 60 miles an hour. So
Yeah,
it's a lot of fun. I think they're more motivated now. All the top 10 placers had on speed suits for skiing and waxed their shovels. We just did a little bit on that, and they
nice.
were just wearing ski stuff. So I think they're highly motivated to go do it again next year, but it is so much fun. It's wonderful.
Awesome. It is cool to watch, you guys. So go to Todd's Facebook page. We'll put the link in the description for his Facebook page. And we will have him back very soon. So I have enjoyed this time with you and thank you for your time.
You're welcome. Thanks again.
All right, we'll see you again soon. Until next time, guys.
Thank you for tuning in to the Wealthy Mind podcast. Please be sure to download the Wealthy Mind app today and make sure to support your local Dress for Success.